Super.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey, I'm Julian Morgans, and you're listening to What It Was Like, the show that asks people who have lived through big, dramatic events what it was like. Today we're talking with Larry Demery. He's one of the two guys who were charged and jailed for the murder of James Jordan Sr., who was, of course, Michael Jordan's dad. You might have seen The Last Dance on Netflix a few years ago, and you'll remember just how profoundly Michael Jordan was affected by his dad's murder. He actually retired from the NBA about 2 months later, and he held a press conference in which he said, "It's made me realize how short life is and how quickly things can end, how innocently." James Jordan was only 56 when he died, and he wasn't doing anything to invite trouble. He was halfway through a long drive and he had pulled over by the side of the road to take a nap and then he just never woke up. And you might be wondering, reasonably, why I'd want to interview someone who's killed a man while he was asleep. You might be wondering why I'm giving him a platform at all. And the answer is that I'm just very interested in how history-altering events feel when you're in the middle of them. I'm interested in the full spectrum of human experience, even when that experience is really quite dark and horrible. And, honestly, I don't actually think that Larry's a bad guy. I've been speaking to him for a couple of months now as we've been trying to line this interview up. So I've got to know him pretty well. And I've got to a point where I feel like this is one of those stories that was just tragic for everyone involved. It was tragic for James Jordan, not to mention his whole family and, everyone who loved him. But it was also tragic for these kids, the perpetrators. And they tried to rob him and they ended up shooting him and the whole thing was a horrible mess. And like I say, they were just kids. This was Larry Demery, who was 17 at the time, and his friend Daniel Green, who was 18. And they've both been in prison ever since. The other reason I wanted to do this story is that it's just such a wild collision of worlds. I mean, what are the chances that these kids, these anonymous guys from rural North Carolina, happen to get tied in with the life and career of the most famous athlete in the history of the world, and at the absolute peak of his career as well? And they did it accidentally. In this story, these kids, they didn't know they were mugging a public figure, and it wasn't until later, as they were rifling through his wallet, that they realized they'd just murdered Michael Jordan's dad. I mean, what kind of a strange twist of fate is that? What does it feel like to be in that moment? So I wanted to find out. So I posted a letter to Larry. You know how you can write prisoners letters. So I just posted him a letter and I asked him if he'd appear on the show, and he agreed. So today's episode is a phone call with Larry. The prison he's at, they gave him a room with a phone so that he could tell his story in private. So that's what we're going to play today. And just a word of warning, some of this episode's pretty hard to listen to. There's a very detailed description of the murder itself, and there's some detail on how they disposed of the body. So if you feel like that might upset you, please just skip this one. Or maybe just skip to the end, because Larry talks about his remorse and his learnings right at the very end, and I think it's the best bit. So anyway, without further ado, here's Larry Demery. So Larry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
So do you want to start by describing where you are right now? Like you're in a room in a prison, right?
Yeah, I'm sitting in a little room in an office with a case manager. They usually plan out what we're to do while we're here, and then hopefully it goes well, and they send us on our way.
And what's the give me a sense of the prison that you're in. Like, how big is it?
Actually, the one I'm at now is fairly small. It's like a 250 maybe, 236 actually. Yeah, the center. had recently left, like, when I was at Scotland. It's like 2,500, something like that. Because of my custody level now. I'm in minimum custody, green. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. So that that gives you a little bit of freedom?
Well, a little more, yeah. That's just, that next step is on outside. They got certain jobs here in school, things that require you to go outside the fence and all, to kind of like get you ready for, the outside, I guess. Yeah.
Oh man, that must be nice.
Yeah.
That must be nice.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you've been in prison since what? 93.
Yeah, 93. Yeah.
Does it feel like a long time?
Yeah, no, man. Sometimes it's hard to believe it's coming up on 29 years, but at certain times it's like when I see the kids around the house or that little girl that wasn't born yet, a month later after I got locked up, that's when it kind of hits me that I really been gone,
Yeah.
Or see somebody I haven't seen in years, everybody's gotten older, and I'm thinking, wow, man, that's you too, But that's about the only time it really hits me. For the most part, though, as long as I've stayed busy or working or something, it's just going on by, man.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the events that sort of led up to this point. So I think that probably the best place. I mean, I usually start these interviews by asking some questions around people's childhoods. So maybe let's start there. Do you just give me a bit of a rundown on on where you grew up and what that was like?
Let's see, man. Of course, North Carolina County or Robeson County. The area I lived in was like just a little, I guess you would call it rural area, out in the middle of nowhere, in between a little town called Pembroke and Roland. Some people might call it the country, so to speak, but it was actually all right, man. It's, as far, depending on what the kid's into, I grew up fishing and, my mom's side of the family, they like to hunt and everything. I didn't really get into that, but, there was always something to do around there as far as that goes. But lots of swimming holes,
I mean, it sounds kind of idyllic. It sounds nice.
Yeah.
But I understand you had a bit of a difficult relationship with your dad.
Well, yeah.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, he was an alcoholic, man. He just couldn't deal with his own problems, and they kind of they trickled on to his family. I love my dad, man. I don't want to make it sound like I didn't, but it's just what it was back then.
Yeah. Can you tell me about one of your earliest memories?
Yeah, and it's wild too, man. It's like I don't even think I was 4 years old, but the very first memory I have is my dad and his baby brother, my Uncle Gary. They were fighting in the yard one night, and I remember Uncle, the oldest brother, Uncle Junior, he was there too. All three brothers. I don't know what it was over, but it was pretty bad. I remember looking out the window and screaming and crying at my mom. They're tearing up my big wheel. It was like because they were kicking it back and forth between each other.
What's a big wheel?
Well, it was like a tricycle, something for a little kid, a little 3 or 4 year old. Before pre-bicycle, I guess you'd call it. Yeah.
Okay, so they were smashing up your kid's toy.
Yeah, my toy. Yeah, kicking it back and forth. That's what my concern was at the moment. Mama, they're tearing up my stuff. But like I said, somewhere a few minutes later, maybe somewhere in between, I remember my Uncle Gary running in the house and him and my mom like holding the door, trying to keep my dad out from getting in. And I remember my uncle having this. He had a knife dangling, like stuck through his upper lip, just kind of like hanging there. I think my dad had stabbed him in the face or something, but.
Wait, hold on. So your dad had stabbed your uncle in the mouth with a knife?
Yeah. And it was still kind of dangling there, man.
Oh, man.
And I remember that, and him and my mom holding the door. And that's it. That was the first memory, I told my mom sometimes about it, and she was like, son, how in the world can you remember, I guess little kids, 2 and 3 year olds, they remember more than we think they do, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the reason I'm asking you this is it because it feels to me as though maybe having a difficult relationship with your dad or maybe having these sort of complications in your upbringing maybe led to some of your behaviors later in life. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, even now, I'm still going to admit, I take responsibility for whatever I do, But it took a while before I would admit to it, but yeah, I guess so, you know what I mean? It did. Looking back, I'd have rather got some kind of, negative attention than none at all, or, Man, it had to have been something like that, because just throwing things away like I did and started, committing crimes all of a sudden. It wasn't something that was like in the background. I was like literally, the black sheep, so to speak, when it come to committing crimes and going to prison on that particular side of the family. And like so, most of the people that I would hang out with or ever got in any kind of trouble with, they were like in a similar situation than I was. Well, the exception was that they like might only have mom there, a single parent or something.
Yeah.
Both mine were there, and I know a lot of people, think that's a good thing, but it's not always, not always. And I would hang around with guys that didn't have a dad around, and we roaming around at night, kids roaming, they will find something to get into.
Yeah. All right. So tell me about so Daniel Green. He was like your good friend growing up, right?
Right. Yeah. I remember the first time I saw Daniel. I met him in third grade, man.
Third grade.
Third grade. Miss Hazel Hunt's class. But I don't know where he came from. It was like already in the middle of the year or something, school year. I remember me and Wesley Hunt out on the yard throwing a frisbee one day. And Daniel walks up. He wants to play, I guess. And I remember trying to take the frisbee from Wesley. They're kind of tussling around, and so I run over and we're all tussling around. And next thing I remember, Miss Hazel shows up, and she was the kind of teacher that she would make you give each other a hug if you got into little scuffles and stuff, to make up. But after that, somewhere along the way, I guess, I remember meeting his mom, Miss Ann, the first time, because she came out to the school and she was like, I want to meet this little fella that Daniel's been talking about so much.
Yeah. So you paint this picture of this like quite a sweet friendship. I mean, you guys met when you were really young in school.
Yeah.
And you sort of paint this picture of you guys going fishing in this rural setting in North Carolina.
We did.
It's nice.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. Yep. Camping out, loved it, man.
But then I'm trying to square that away with like later on you guys committed one of the most infamous crimes of the 90s.
Yeah.
These two images feel fairly hard to reconcile. So, yeah, I mean, tell me what happened.
Well, a lot of people don't. It was like, I think Daniel was 15 maybe. He got into some neighborhood guys where he lived. He got into a scuffle with them, and they beat him up pretty bad. I think a couple weeks later, same ones, they came back and they was going to try to do it again. But this time, Daniel picked up an axe, and one of the main ones was like, you ain't going to do nothing with it. And the way I understand it, Daniel showed him that he would do something with it, because it was like a year later when the dude woke up out of a coma, but he went to prison for that.
So Daniel went to prison?
Yeah. See, a lot of them, I guess the media isn't too much aware of it, because like during the court proceedings, it was squashed. I forgot exactly what it was. I mean, something was done in court to where it couldn't be brought up, mentioned, or whatever. But it was 2.5 years, we were separated again. But this time he was in prison. And it was like, and when he came out, man, it was, he was only out roughly 2 months maybe before we were arrested and locked up on this. But something happened, man. Something changed. I mean, not just on his end, but, me too. A couple years, and then going from 15 to 17, 18, go through a lot of changes during those few years, I guess. But
yeah, man. I mean, it's like those years are rough for anyone. But I mean, I look back on those years, puberty and just high school, and just like I wouldn't relive those years.
Yeah.
So I mean, I understand. You told me that you guys were kind of getting into some sort of like crime sprees. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Well, the way it went, man, I don't know how it works now because I haven't made it out yet, but hopefully soon I will find out. But used to, when you get out on parole in North Carolina, your PO found you a job, automatic. That was the case with Daniel, and he had only had the job for like a week, and a few times, I'd go pick him up. But that same day, man, we got home. We went back to my parents' house. We're just sitting there talking, man. But I know that he kept saying, I got to do something, man. I got to figure out what to do. I got to get on, man, some kind of way. I got to get on. I guess maybe around the third or fourth time he said it, I'm like, what are you talking about, man? What you trying to do? It was like I already kind of knew, you know what I mean? But I wanted them to say. But off the rip, I was like, what are you trying to do, man? I'm not selling no dope. What you trying to, robberies, just the way he was, what he was saying. I knew, where he was getting at.
So he was scheming. He was kind of saying like,
putting it out there, But man, here's the point right here where I still struggle with it. I'm like, so what you want to do? And I just threw everything away, man, from that day,
So what was his answer? What did he want to do?
Well, it's like, we'll go around. We had to get some money to start with to do something, whatever. It might have been an idea to buy some dope, because I remember at one time he did. But the only thing we could think of, I guess, at the time was robbery, because it wasn't but just a day or two.
Yeah.
We borrowed a pistol from his mom. She didn't know. She had no idea that we had it, and we used it to commit the first one. And then it was off to the races after that.
So you guys went around committing armed holdups.
Yeah, we actually did 2. Yeah.
And you were holding up
a few other things. Yeah, I mean, several times we went out to do that, but nobody. It was like random acts. Nothing planned.
Sure. We're talking like convenience stores.
Things. Yeah, exactly. Cause matter of fact, one was a convenience store. Yeah.
Okay. So take me up to the part where your story intersects with James Jordan's.
Wow. Okay. On this particular night, like I said, we had already pulled, robbed. I mean, the first one, there was 2 couples, like, down in a motel. The second one at the convenience store. Like I said, there were several times in between. We went out places looking, whatever. So, but this was like the last. I remember that particular night, we didn't have any place we were going to be, but there's motels, it was right by Highway 95, an interstate here through North Carolina. Motels all up and down, That's kind of like one of our spots, you catch somebody coming out, people on vacation, traveling back and forth, The idea being, if they're traveling, they got to have a pocket full of money or something, And that's what we actually had been doing that night, just hanging out around the motel, creeping around, waiting on somebody to pop out. But on that particular night, though, I guess we had maybe been hanging around in the parking lot, the edges of the parking lot at the motel, an hour or so. But, right, not far from the motel. I mean, we're still out in, like I said, the interstate's here, but we're still out in kind of like country type area. And so I had my car that I drove, like, parked back up in some woods. And we would walk back and forth from the motel to the car, And it was doing these walks 2 or 3 different times, just get burnt hanging at the motel and walk back to the car for a second and do, back and forth. Maybe that second or third trip, though, it was like the third one maybe. Right beside the highway, we noticed the car sitting there, Daniel actually mentioned it. But the spot that he was sitting, it was like Interstate 95, and then through the state to Highway 74 that comes through, and it was sitting right there. But I remember him saying something about, man, I think, and he's always been a suspicious type too, so let me put that out there. But he said something to the effect of like, man, I think that might be the law, man, laying on us. He said something like, I think that's the cops, man. And I'm like, well, look, let's go find out. I'm not one to keep talking about it too much. Let's go see, man. As we walk by, see the car, just kind of noticed there's a guy in there, and I mean, realize, the first time by, it ain't the cops.
Mm.
So we going back to the motel. Maybe hang out another hour or so.
So you were sort of hanging outside the motel trying to find someone to hold up.
Yeah, randomly. Yeah, that's all it was. Nothing particular.
But no one came out?
No, nothing that really, nobody that struck us as being the one, so to speak.
Yeah. You were looking for someone rich.
Yeah, well, there's certain, there's certain things I guess you look for, a bunch of suitcases coming out or something, but there wasn't nothing going on that night. It was pretty slow. Like I said, it was doing, I can't remember exactly. It's been so long, man. But during one of the trips back to the court, I remember Daniel, he mentioned it first, right? He said, man, you know what, that was a Lexus. I don't know what a Lexus is, you know what I mean? They were like, I understand now that back then the car had only been out like a year or two, some high-end luxury model by Toyota. But so we walked back by, once it was decided we were leaving the motel, idea came up that, he said something about it being a Lexus, and let's go check it out.
So let me just get this straight. So right now, you guys are walking back to the motel.
Yeah,
Parked to the side of the interstate is a Lexus, like a fancy new car.
Yeah, man, just sitting there, dude.
And you guys, and there's a guy asleep in the front seat. So you guys are like, well, maybe we should. Maybe this is the one.
Laid back, and then as it was pointed out later on, we walked by again and checked him out laying there, and see him laying there with all the gold on, rings on his fingers and a gold watch. And man, we actually thought the guy was a dope dealer or something, a drug dealer. To be on a ride like that and sitting beside the road, asleep. Obviously he's pretty confident in something. I don't know, but looking at all his jewelry and everything, we thought that's what was going on.
Okay, so then what happened?
Well, like I said, we just walked by a couple times, checked it out, and then the plan came up to, well, let's rob this guy, He's still in there, just leaned back in the seat, sleep. Man, it's been 2 or 3 hours, It's been a while. Like I said, the idea initially was to, and this was something else that was kind of strange, but on the passenger side, the window was halfway down. Yeah, that's where we kept stopping. We'd look in and just keep getting it. And we were supposed to get the guy, wake him up, drive down the road somewhere, eventually, and just put him out, take his stuff.
So what happened instead?
When we went by the last time when we finally, okay, this is it. Here's what we want, this is the moment. Man, I don't want to call it panic. I don't know. I really don't. As we were there was only one pistol, right? Daniel had it. He tried to hand it to me, and it was like, I remember him saying something along the lines of, I shot the last one, shoot him. No, man, no. The man was laying there asleep, I couldn't do it, man.
Yeah.
I had it in my hand. I actually stuck through the window and everything, but.
Oh man. I mean, how do you shoot a sleeping man? That's.
I don't know. I couldn't do it. I mean, it was. Like I said, I'm not trying to make myself sound like no kind of innocent person or anything. I was right there and down with the program, but nobody was supposed to have been getting hurt to begin with. Never mind the fact one already had prior to, but to kill somebody, like that, cold blood, and that's something different, man. It's hard. I can't explain it, but I just know it's not. It's not. And I remember handing it back to him. He took it. And then a second or two in between, and then the shot. And that was it. Just one shot, while he laid there asleep.
What happened next?
Oh man, it was like when he was hit, he just kind of moved around a little bit, kind of made a noise, like a moaning noise, just kind of like sat up real quick, and just kind of laid back again, that was it. Just a few seconds and it was over, man. He stopped moving. Yeah.
How did you feel in that moment?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I remember Daniel saying, I remember telling me, help me move him, man. I can't move him by myself. But we had to reach out and pull him over from the driver's side over to the passengers so Daniel could get in, get behind the wheel. I remember doing that. And like I said, he got in, took off. I went and got my car. We met back at the trailer, and then from there it was the next stage.
So tell me, like we've spoken previously about the first moment that you realized that you'd shot Michael Jordan's dad. Can you tell me about like pulling the car apart and realizing what had happened?
Mm-hmm. Well, as we just took off down the road, man. Like I said, without a plan, didn't know exactly where we were going to go with it at the moment. But as we're driving, we're heading down towards the town of Roland, and we just pulled off. This place is like full of huge fields, cornfields, tobacco fields. we pulled off in a cornfield, check things out, see what was going on here. When we pull over, I get out. I'm in the back seat back here because Daniel's still driving. Man's over on the passenger side and laid back, laid out. And I remember being like 3 o'clock in the morning, man, something like that. 3. We pulled into town. Roland's like literally like a one-horse town. They got one stoplight, And I remember pulling through, going up under the light at 3 o'clock in the morning. The radio is bumping, and the system is bumping in the car. Got a dead man. And I'm like, man, what are we doing here, When we pulled over, we went in this field, man, we start looking around. He's going through the pockets and taking his shoes off. And Daniel's actually the first person that said anything, right? Looking back now, I went in the trunk. I saw a couple golf bags, but I'm not really noticing anything, And then Daniel says something to the effect like, man, I think, I believe we got Michael Jordan's dead here. Just kind of like, I'm like, yeah, right. And he'll be showing up next, What are you talking about, man? So he shows me, he's got this big stack of credit cards in his hand, but he pulls the driver's license out and he shows me this, look, and it's James R. Jordan. That doesn't, of course, everybody in here from North Carolina knows who Mike is, but James R. didn't really mean anything to me at the time, I didn't know. But as we continue going through the car, right, going to the glove compartment, and the first thing I see is, the register. The car was registered to both of them, had both name on it, if I remember how. I think that's what it was. And then other thing, the watch that he took off, the engraving that was on the back of it, to Dad. That's what really set it off for me, right? To Dad, from Michael and Juanita. I don't know why. I don't know why I knew at the time that his wife's name was Juanita, but I did. And that's when I was like, I'm already tripping, man, because we got this dead man here in the car with us. But now it's like, whoa, they're really coming now. They're going to be out this. I remember saying something like, what was that? Somebody, the feds is coming. They ain't going to stop, man. They ain't going to stop. It's over for us. I knew it that night pretty much, but now I start looking back again, over like in the trunk, in the back seat of the car. I'm noticing everything back there, like one set of golf clubs got a Chicago Bulls sign on it, red and black. The other one's the Carolina blue and white, Tar Heels, shaving kits, and everything around, and I'm like, like I said, I don't know how I missed it to start with, but yeah.
Shit, man.
It was really something, man. It was
That's an intense moment.
Yeah. And then, like I said, too, the fact that there's a dead body right here in the car. And I've never been, that was a first for me, too. You know what I mean? I've never been that close to a dead person. I'm riding around with them in the car. And, then the fact, here we are responsible for taking his life, We're
going to take a quick ad break here, and we'll be right back with more What It Was Like.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
So you guys decided to get rid of the body in like a swamp, right? There was like a...
Yeah, well, that's... Okay, now let me take you into Roland. That's where a minute ago I was already trying to go. But Daniel's grandparents lived there, right? We knew we had to get rid of him, get him out of there. But Daniel said that, remember, there was a waste treatment plant, like right beside, right by his grandmother's house there in town. And I remember him saying something about, man, we can take him there, throw him in that, whatever the waste was, and the chemicals, eat him up. I'm like, whatever, man, let's go. Whatever we got to do, let's do it. Like I said, man, I remember going in, we're driving. By this time, we done left the field. We done took off back down the road. We know who we got here now. And as we're pulling in, man, I remember, I said, Daniel was driving the radio wide open, man. It was like, what was the song? It'll come to me in a minute, man. I remember what the song was and everything, but we get to this little waste treatment center, right? And we're just driving around. I mean, it's not really a center. Like, here's houses all around it, and then here it is, you know, a little, like in front of it, a little park, I guess, that the locals would go sit in or whatever, hang out. 3 o'clock in the morning, though, man. Radio wide open, just kind of creeping around in the neighborhood. We can't get in. Since the last time Daniel had been there, there'd been a gate put up, and it was padlocked. We couldn't get in. He's still trying to find a way in. I lose it. I'm like, man, what the hell are you doing? But, you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. The cops, man, they're, you know, you trying to get locked up tonight, you know. And I remember him saying, you got a better idea. And that's when I was like, matter of fact, I do. And it was my idea for the swamp that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my idea. And the reason for that was, remember earlier I was telling you I worked with my now wife's stepdad at the time?
Yeah.
Where we worked, or Crestline Modular Homes, that was right down the road from this particular creek or swamp that you mentioned. And that's how I was familiar with it, knew where it was, you know, out of the way. And yeah. So when he asked me, I got a better idea, I was like, yep, sure do. And we took off. And then that's where we, you know, straight down to P Bridge Road. That was like right from on the borderline, North and South Carolina. And that's where we dropped them over the bridge, man.
You just dropped. Do you remember that moment of just like bundling this man's body over the edge of a bridge and watching him hit the water?
Yeah. I mean, because I remember the tussle, like the little struggle kind of, for both of us too. And we just got him over, man. And I remember, like I said, it's nighttime. I remember hearing the water, you know, hit the water. And that was it. You know.
Shit.
Next thing I know, man. Well, I found out later on, it might have been 2 weeks later, that he had got kind of floated down a little ways and got hung up on a limb hanging out in the water. And this local dude, man, going fishing, ran up on him.
Damn. All right.
Yeah, it was something, man.
So I understand you guys, you came undone because you'd been using the cell phone in the car, and this was 1993.
Right.
So cell phones were
1993. Yeah, I've told people in here several times recently. I just mentioned it again, but I talk about cell phones. It's like, man, I left the street. Motorola pagers, SkyTel pagers, what people were toting around, and where I was from, you were either the cops or a drug dealer at the time. Nobody else really toted them, you know. But yeah, that's what was going on, man. I remember that morning coming back up the highway. From the creek, you know, after we dropped them off, coming up Highway 74 again, going back towards Lumberton. I'm driving now. I mean, he picks the phone up there and starts punching numbers. I'm like, whoa, man, what are you doing? Just messing them dialing, man. I said, man, you can't, I don't think you can't do that, man, because when I'm understanding things, they can pretty much pinpoint where you're at on the road and all that, you know, from these phones, you know. I remember he went on, he's like, man, you think just because I've been in prison, I don't know what's going on out here, this happening. Nah, man, just don't use that. Don't use the phone, man.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And it was.
But anyway, yeah.
That was the thing that brought you undone.
Exactly, yeah. Well, like I said, we're going back to his house that morning. Man, I done been up for a couple of days now. I got to crash, you know. And I did. I remember laying down on the couch, and I might have been there a couple hours, but when I woke up, Daniel wasn't in the trailer, right? I looked out the back window. There's the car, and he's kicked back in the seat, you know, with his foot out the window, talking on the phone. And that's actually the moment right then when I knew it was done. It was over with. Yeah.
Nah, man.
Yeah, it's coming.
Can you tell me about the very first moment that you saw, like a news report or something that was talking about how Michael Jordan's dad was dead? Can you remember that moment?
Yeah, sure do, man. It was 3 weeks, at least 3 weeks later. But I remember it being on Friday. There it was, you know, Rob Sonian front page, James Jordan missing. And then it was the very next day, Saturday, later on that night around 11:30 or so, when they came to see me the first time. But I remember, like I said, I'd been anticipating it, man. Those 3 weeks after that, I went home. I had Daniel's brother bring me back to Lumberton.
And when you saw the very first news report on the TV, how did it make you feel?
Actually, man, it might sound strange or whatever, but in a sense, it was kind of relief almost, a little bit, Not that I wanted to get locked up or arrested. I still wanted to get away with it now, but man, all them weeks of going around, just toting it around inside, not being able to, I couldn't talk about that to nobody, say nothing about it. And like I said, in any moment, anticipating or expecting the door to be kicked in, So when I saw it the first time, I was like, well, yes, that's the beginning of it. I just knew, man. I knew. I just knew.
Yeah, and you were arrested.
Yeah, like I said, the very next day. I think if I remember the reports right, Daniel was picked up the first time about 6:30 that Saturday evening. And like I said, they came after me the first time around 11 o'clock that night, 11:30, something like that.
Oh man. And do you remember, did your mum say anything to you, or was there anything sort of emotional about that?
Well, actually, that day, that particular Saturday, nobody. I was the only one home. I saw them coming. I stayed. Like I said, I lived out in the country, man. The highway was out there, and they had about a quarter of a mile before they could get to the house where I lived. Because I stayed down the dirt road. But I wasn't in the house when they came the first time, and the reasoning. It wasn't that I planned on running or anything like that. It's just I didn't want to go down, go up, and my mom not know anything. What in the world was going on? And so I waited until I knew they were supposed to come back that night, and it was around 12:30 or 1 o'clock when they came in. And sure enough, I guess there was somebody sitting by the road waiting to see, because just a few minutes after they came in, 3 or 4 cars pulled in behind them. I waited, man. Like I said, I'm outside. I'm out in the trees, out in the woods, watching the whole time. I remember the first time when they came. Like I said, I stayed off the highway on the dirt road, right? Man, when all the cars was like a line down the highway. When they started turning off the highway onto the dirt road, I was like, man, I think I lost count about 25, and I took off and ran out the house and hit the woods.
There was 25 police cars to pick you up.
That's about where I think I lost count at like 25, man.
Shit.
Because the only thing I can figure out is because they didn't know. They didn't know nothing about me.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if you're familiar with all the stuff that went on, was said in the beginning, but there was all this stuff going on about my being involved, gambling with the mafia, this and that, all kind of speculation out there, you know what I mean?
Just conspiracy nonsense.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Then I find out later that Daniel's he's already down there feeding that, so in a sense.
Yeah. Hey, I want to ask you whether you've ever been contacted by Michael Jordan or any of his people. All these years later, has anyone from the family ever reached out to you?
No, not at all, man. I don't know. I don't want to say it's surprising, but at the same time, I look at how others that I know, like, have committed a crime against the family or whatever, and like when they're going to court, trial, somebody's usually always there, and afterwards they speak to the family and see what's going on, how they feel about things, but I never saw anybody there,
Yeah.
I heard that there was an attorney that represented the family that would sit in the proceedings sometimes, but I never knew who it was, or, yeah.
Let's say, I don't think he would, but on the off chance that Michael Jordan ever hears this conversation, would you have a message that you'd like to say to him?
Well, man, I know there's no words or whatever that, I'm sorry, whatever that can make up for or bring back, loss I was responsible for, But, I said, I'm not making an excuse, At that time, at that age, whatever, I thought I knew what I was doing there, or made a decision to do, but Nah, man. This is horrible, man. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than the fact, I'm sorry, man. I hate I invaded anybody's life like I did, It ain't just, and not just about me being here, but looking on all the people's lives that I did affect, his, the rest of the families, mine, Daniel's family, they're all victims in a sense too, because I know my poor mom, she's been with me this whole way, man, still riding, but she's done this time right along with me, But I've still had her there, So I think about Michael Jordan, my mom can see me, but he can't see his dad. And I think about things like that, what can you say,
Yeah. I mean, I totally hear you. And just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that you should apologize. That's not my style. I guess I'm just saying that maybe, I don't know, maybe there's an opportunity here to just make it clear to anyone who's listening that you've thought about this over the years and you.
Oh yeah, all the time, man. Yeah. Not a day is gone by. But I never wanted it to seem like I did. At one point, I sent a letter to his address to him. Saying I was sorry, and I was hoping that some way they could find it in their heart to forgive me for what I'd done. But I waited to over 20 years to do that, man, because I didn't want it to seem like I was coming up parole. When I began coming up parole after 20 years, anytime before that, I didn't like I was looking for something, some kind of hand to make, maybe they'll forgive me and they'll ask for parole. It wasn't nothing like that, you know what I mean? That's why I deliberately waited. So if he did get it or whoever got it and read it, that it would seem more sincere, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Obviously, you were 17 when all of this happened.
Yeah.
And you're a much older, I don't know, I guess you're much wiser now as well. You've lived a lot more life. You probably realize the sanctity of life a hell of a lot more than you did when you were 17.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. I believe there's a time for everything. So, like, what we were doing, there's never a time for that. Serving God, protecting innocent life or whatever, okay. But for any other reason to take life, something somebody's got or something somebody believes or the way somebody looks, nah. That's never an excuse or a reason for anything like that,
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So, I mean, like, I imagine in prison that you've been there for several decades now. So you experience entire periods of your life. And I was wondering if you could summarize, like, what were your 20s like? What were your 30s? Just go through the decades in your life and just sort of summarize them for me.
Man, I know, like I said, all my 20s in here, like I said, the first 10 years or so, kind of like figuring it out, man, trying to find my way. And let's see, the 30s, I remember when I hit 30, man, it was like, I don't know, I guess I was told that like every man, I guess, that tries to grow up hits that mark around 30ish or so, but, how do you explain, you hit that point to where you, like, make certain decisions in life, what stance you're going to take on certain issues, whatever, but throughout my 30s, I decided, how I'm going to think about things, my take on things in life, if I learned, that's when I started really getting more into not that I really am now, and let me say this, that I really do need to get back to that point, but my spirituality kicked in, more so in my early 30s. I started thinking about things like that more so. Toward the end of my 30s, I guess, during that time, I'm looking forward more to outside of this place, Because by that time, we're getting pretty close to 20 years. First time I came up parole, I was 38. Yeah, I was 38. So.
And how old are you now?
I'm 46, man. I'll be this August, 47. I turned 47 August 3rd. August the 15th will be exactly 29 years I've been incarcerated. Yeah.
Oh, Larry, you've been in prison longer than you're out of prison. You're up for parole next year, right?
Yeah. So something's recently changed with mine in the past year or two. I was coming up every 3 years, but because of some law changes and things going on, dealing with juveniles being tried as adults, and that has upped my parole date. I mean, my parole eligibility every 2 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're up for parole next year, so you potentially might get out. What will you do with your life when you're free?
Oh man. As far as work goes, I really don't know what I want to do as far as like making a living. There's a few things I wouldn't mind. I've learned how to transcribe Braille in here. That's a trade. It's pretty cool. I wouldn't mind doing that. But my main goal is to restore relationships and build relationships that I didn't have. I told you about that little girl that was still in her mom's belly when I got locked up.
Yeah.
She wants me a part of her life.
Oh,
I got 5 grandsons now, 5 doorsteps, man, doorsteps. I need to get to them, Yeah. I need to get to where they're at. I don't see it in them now, but who knows? The oldest was 11. His dad's in prison. His dad's in prison doing 30 years for murder of all things in South Carolina.
Yeah,
so the likelihood of him, Grandpa, his dad, on down the line, that cycle will keep on. So I'm trying to get out there and break that.
Yeah. So the woman you were with, Angela, you were with her when you were 17, and she was pregnant, right? And she's
right.
She's still with you. She's stuck by you all these years.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's remarkable.
I really don't understand it either, man. I asked sometimes, we were together a couple, 2 years. I mean, it was like my 16th birthday. The day I turned 16, it was like official. We were officially together. And I don't know. I don't know what it was between there and 18 when I got arrested. I asked her sometimes. She said I do little things for her that stuck out, and you'd have to get her to explain that. I don't. Yeah.
Well, she's obviously communicated a lot of messages between you and me over the last couple of months to help organize this. So, she's been incredible. She's an amazing lady.
Sure is, yeah. Man, I tell you, a guy that's incarcerated and confined or has a lady that stands by him like that. Wow, man, yeah. Hold on for life because they're priceless,
Yeah. So I guess we're getting to the end of this thing, and I just want to hear. I want to hear what you've learned, and there's 2 things. There's 2 prongs to that. First of all, I'd like to know what you've learned about media and kind of like history. Like you've kind of accidentally become part of history. And then I'd also like to just know what you've learned about life. Because this has been a big part of your life, So let's start with the sort of media history thing. Like, what do you think you've learned there?
Well, man, until Julian, until meeting up with you, I pretty much hated media. I mean, I understand the idea, to keep the people informed and everything, but it's been my experience that it was just too. I don't know, the sensational. You got to kind of like, I guess you put yourself in my shoes, and every time they're talking about it, it's not in a good light, ever, So I kind of...
It's all right, man. I hate a lot of media, too.
Yeah, but, but like I say, every now and again, and here's one of those times you encounter somebody that, okay, this is what it was really meant to be, keep folks informed or whatever, but not to smear or put folks down, but just to get it out there, get the truth out or whatever it may be, but like I said, just the way you approach, like over the years, I've got several letters or people have called the prisons, want to talk or whatever, but it was just, I don't know, when I read your letter and like the sincerity in it, you told me exactly what you were after, what you wanted, and blah, 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 and I was like, wow, kind of impressed me, dude. So I guess you say you restored my faith in the media, so to speak.
Well, thanks, man. I wouldn't have don't have too much faith for the media.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Let's see. You were talking about life?
Yeah. What have you learned about life?
It's too short. You got to make the most out of it. You know what I mean? Spend the most time you can with the ones you love, and just be the best person you can, man. Because I'm looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. You know, you look back at all that you missed, or what you could have done, this and that. But if you take it to the fullest every day, you know, you won't have to worry about that.
If you've enjoyed today's episode and you're thinking, hey, I've got a story that's kind of similar to that, something interesting but surprising, then get in touch. We're always looking for story suggestions or feedback or whatever. So hit me up. I'm Julian Morgans on Instagram and Morgans Julian on Twitter. Today's episode was produced by Rachel Tuffery. It was edited and mixed by Jimmy Saunders, who also did our theme music. Our cover art was by Naomi Lee Beveridge, and our intern was Maddie Runting. And a huge thanks to Katie Hirschroeder for mailing my letter to Larry, and to Larry's wife, Angela, who passed messages back and forth between me and Larry for months. And this whole thing has been a Super Real production.